The Afterlife by Gary Soto, Chapter 6. Fausto wasn't home, and neither was my punk killer in yellow shoes. I could live without either of them, and so could all of Fresno. Truth is, I had the suspicion that Fausto didn't really live there, but considered the rundown place a warehouse for stuff he ripped off. Perfect. An export. Businesses that would leave the neighborhood, children crying. I could change that. I had learned a thing or two about my body. When I touched the hinges of the front doors with the stubs of my arms, the coldness of my breath made the hinges snap. I was providing the bikes with an escape route, though I knew they were not going to start pedaling on their own. Impossible. But I was acquainted with rundown neighborhoods. When a door was open, the street kids spinning sunflower seed shells would climb down the steps and holler, "Hey!" maybe 3 times. If there was no answer, they would enter like bugs, antennas tuned to the sound of someone home. But unlike ants that carry away crumbs, these kids, praying to the saint of breaking and entering, would tiptoe in like ninjas and take whatever pleased them. Straddling a lowrider bicycle, Crystal watched me freeze the hinges. Together we breathed on the door until it collapsed at an angle. What was death but a cold wind, after all? She watched while biting the ends of her hair and clapped as the door fell when a draft pushed against it. The things that got knocked in the night went unnoticed in this barrio. Not even the dogs barked. The clock on the wall read 2:45. We were wide awake in the heart of the night. The moon had already carried itself westward, and, in time, the night would shed its darkness. By 5 o'clock, the eastern horizon would be rubbed with the pink of a new day. Fausto, a night thief, would not return until the afternoon. Or maybe not at all. He'd be sleeping with some chica who didn't know better. Let's go, I told Crystal. Crystal got off the bicycle and approached me. She grimaced at me as if it didn't make any sense. What do you mean? I have to go home, I said jokingly. I asked, you want to meet my mom? The words home and mom had the strands of hair falling from her mouth. As we left the house and bounced down the front steps, I recognized the longing inside her. She wanted to go home and say goodbye to her parents. Nothing, she answered. Nothing, the way I figured. The mind was always swirling with one thought or another. It was impossible not to think something, even in sleep. But in sleep, they call your thoughts dreams or nightmares. Come on, I begged as she drew close. Tell me. Crystal was unafraid of the stumps on my arms. She gripped them and murmured something about disappointing her parents. About what, though? I examined her face for a clue, but found none. What are you thinking? I probed. Just something, she answered. She nervously undid the top button of her blouse. I was aware that she was picturing her family, mom and dad, and maybe her bedroom and brothers and sisters if she had any. That was what I pictured on the roof of Club Estrella. Home with mom and dad in front of the television. I gritted my teeth as though I remembered something else. Dog, I thought. I kept a 3-pack of condoms under my mattress and none of them ever got used. In a week or so, my mom would come in to straighten up my bed and discover that box. I could see her rattling against her ear, then starting to cry as she realized she would never have grandchildren. Crystal lowered her face. Her beauty had me pressing my body to hers. I hugged her, and she hugged me back, her face resting against my neck. God, how come I hadn't met her when I was living? I need to go home, she said, and she pushed me away gently. Her eyes had a sorrowful look that spread to me. I felt my own sorrow, which deepened when I saw that my calves were vanishing. For me, time was running out. She moved away from me and stood in the street. She faced south towards Selma, and I could tell that she had much to say to her parents. But she didn't have the words to tell them. She was dead and a ghost, and her parents, for all I knew, were unaware of her death. She'd only been dead a few hours. Perhaps her body hadn't been found yet. Crystal, I beckoned with my eyes. How did you die? Pills, she answered, and she searched my face for trust. I suppose she found it in my eyes. She bit her lower lip and punished it really hard because when she let go, I could see teeth marks in her lip. Wind whipped around her and her long hair flowed. Her skirt also flapped like wings. A dude, I figured. A dude was involved. Why else would she kill herself? I cried and asked, what was his name? A dude, I figured. A dude was involved. Why else would she kill herself? I pried and asked, what was his name? She turned and started walking up the street. She intended to get back home. I was torn whether to go to my family or go with Crystal. She began running without a goodbye. Pitifully, I swallowed my loneliness. I couldn't stand losing her and nearly crying because I wasn't sure if I'd be able to make it back to Fresno before disappearing altogether. I chased after her. Crystal, I yelled and joked, let's do breakfast in Selma. The town had no more than 10,000 people and maybe 2,000 cows and an equal number of chickens and pigs. In fact, in Selma, there was every chance that your best friend was a fly-speckled pig that you fed daily from a dented pail. I was soon running at her side, me, a perennial third place long distance runner. We galloped in time, left leg and then right, twin gazelles leaping in the darkness of night. I was keeping up, stride for stride, and observing the quiet street where I imagined poor families sawing logs of sleep. I imagined the warm beds and blankets rising on each snore. I imagined a mother stumbling from bed as her baby began to kick and cry. Crystal smiled at me, and I had to smile. There was no happiness in my heart. I was no longer thinking of myself, but Crystal. Her body lay somewhere in Fresno, maybe, unclaimed because it had yet to be discovered. Right then, I poked her shoulder with the stump of my arm and got her to slow to a walk. Crystal, I gotta ask you something. She pulled her hair from her eyes, which were luminous in the night. Where did you die? Don't ask, she whimpered. Her eyes narrowed, some of their brightness disappeared. I gotta go, I answered. I had to know whether her body was found or if some stray dog was circling it. She could be in a ditch, the passenger side of a parked car, or half clothed in a shallow grave. She was dead, I realized, but I wanted to protect her body. Maybe I could be the first show of respect, like I'd seen in TV people. We'll put teddy bears and flowers and balloons where a friend got killed. Why? She asked, rocking on her heels. I was close enough to kiss her. I thought of making one that kind move, but my question was serious. Just where was she? Her body. We stood like that, eyes level on each other. Just then, a car turned up the street and both of us watched it picking up speed. Crystal took my arm, squeezed her eyes shut, and we let the car pass through us. That's a funny feeling, she commented as she turned and watched the car continue down the street. Its bright lights a sinful red as the car turned a corner. The tires squeezed, but just barely. I continued to probe. Come on, girl, where? I repeated. Where did it happen? She pointed vaguely. In my car. And where's your car? I had to brace myself because the wind was picking up. Crystal, however, a new ghost, blew halfway down the street. I flew to her and asked her again. At Reading Park, she confided. She faced southward, her hair blowing and her skirt flapping, revealing thighs that were muscled from running. Of course, I knew the park. Teenagers like us shared our loneliness in that park, where at night peacocks howled like witches. I had been one of those teenagers, and me and my carnal angel, both of us sitting on top of benches as we took turns complaining about life, which for us was mainly school, maybe parents if they were jacking us up to our laziness. I recalled the rush of wind through the eucalyptus and how the mighty trees dropped leaves. We tore those leaves like movie tickets, leaf after leaf, that kept our hands busy. We went there to talk about school and our parents and about how they didn't know us because they were always working. What was Dad, anyhow, except a man who worked and came home and watched television? And Mom, a gossiper whose mouth was a bud of lines from dunking donuts into creamy coffee and talking too much. How was I wrong? That's just how parents were. My mom had warned me not to go to Club Estrella, while Dad, his hands on the remote control, offered me only his hangdog eyes. Soon we were entering Roding Park from Olive Street. An unseen peacock howled. Spooky, I remarked. Crystal laughed. Like us, huh? She laughed with a hand on her belly. We're ghosts. The wind rattled the eucalyptus and bent the thinnest branches. Leaves fluttered in the dark as they fell. Somewhere a swing squeaked. The door of a utility shed banged like a hammer. Though it was dark and the homeless were sleeping on cardboard the lengths of coffins, we weren't scared. The ducks weren't either. Some were quacking and waddling around, though they should have been asleep on the edges of their muddy pond. In a few hours, the ducks would be poking their bills into their feathery shoulders and riding the mossy water in search of food.